Hello, my name is Chris Walters. I'm the Grants Manager and Gallery Curator for the Arts Council of the Southern Finger Lakes. And welcome to this presentation of the 2018 NISCA Decentralization Grant Programs, which really mainly are about making sure that arts are accessible to all and that local decision making plays the part in how the grants are distributed. Now, these are funds from the New York State Council on the Arts. They encompass three different grant programs: community arts, individual artists, teaching artists. These are for Steuben, Schuyler, Chemung, and Tioga counties. And key is that they must occur in the same county as the applicant. We're going to talk about the different programs, how much money for each one, selection process, tips, and hint. So the general timeline is right now we're launching the application and guidelines, and we'll do support and seminars throughout September. The deadlines are in October. November, December is when the review panels will be conducted. December is when the award notifications are made, and then the checks are mailed and the awards are announced in early spring of next year. And then we do have a public award ceremony. So the first one we're going to talk about is community arts, and these are essentially grant programs that are public-facing for the community arts and cultural activities put on by organizations, towns, individuals, but really they're about making arts and culture accessible to all. And so I'm going to talk about the program briefly for each of these different grants we offer. So for the community arts one, again, they support community-focused arts activities. The grants range from $500 to $5,000. They can fund artist fees, marketing, a number of different things. Make sure you check the full eligibility in the guideline. They do need to be accessible to general public, and examples in the past include concerts, public art, workshops, classes, festivals, theater, etc. So you need to be either a nonprofit or a local government. You can be an individual or an unincorporated organization and applying through a community partner or fiscal sponsor. I'll talk about that in a second. And you do have to have a 25% match. That match can come from anywhere. It can be an in-kind or a monetary match that is monetized for the grant purposes. All the eligibility requirements are found online. So now if you apply through a fiscal sponsor, it basically means that you are going to work with a nonprofit or government entity that meets all the eligibility requirements. They are not a direct applicant to NISCA. That's really important. They actually receive the funds, and then they would be the ones to distribute the funds to you. The other way is to apply through a community partner. The same rules apply as far as they can't being a direct applicant to NISCA. The only stipulation is they can't also be a community arts grant applicant. So if they want to also apply for the grant, they should be a fiscal sponsor. And the biggest thing is that the funding is going to go to you as the applicant. It's not going to flow through that community partner. So the award criteria for this grant is they're looking at the artistic cultural merit, the feasibility of the project, the importance to the community, the involvement of qualified artists, and then also the marketing and outreach, and then they're going to look at your budget to make sure it's accurate and practical. So the next grant I'm going to talk about is the Teaching Artist Grant Program. So this grant program has been around for a while. It's changed names a couple times, and we're changing it to, actually we're going to talk about the Individual Artist Grant Program first. So the Individual Artist Grant Program used to be the Artist Crossroads Grant Program, and the biggest difference now is that this grant program can take place anywhere. In the past, it had to take place at a non-public or in a public non-arts venue, but now it can take place anywhere. So this grant is about the creation of new work by an individual artist, and it must reflect the local community in some way. It should be informed by the community in the either the planning and the creation process. You can have a gallery exhibition, public performances, installations. It just needs to be accessible to the public in some way. You can fund your time as an artist, and the grants themselves are for $2,500. It's an all or nothing grant. You can't be a current student. You need to be 19 years or older, and the work needs to be new and created specifically for this project. But again, it can be music, it can be visual arts, any kind of art, and it can be in any kind of setting as long as it's accessible to the public. As far as the criteria go, we're going to look at the artistic cultural merit of the project, the feasibility, the involvement in the community in it, the strength of the artistic work sample is going to be a big part of that, then your marketing, and then as well as your budget. Again, those are the criteria for this particular grant program. And now we are going to talk about the Teaching Artist Grant Program, which was formerly the Public School Teaching Artist Grant Program. And for this particular grant program, this is about bringing a teaching artist in to work with K through 12 students. Now this year, this grant program is changing so that there's going to be two different project strands, which I'll talk about in one moment. So it's opening up the grant a little bit. So as far as the grant goes, again, this is for sequential arts education projects by an individual artist or organization. The grants are $500 to $5,000. They can pay for the artist fee, marketing. They're supposed to enhance curriculum, not supposed to take the place of curriculum. You do have to have demonstrated learning outcomes, but there's been a lot of really great projects in the past with this one, very creative. So the two project strands are either an in-school project taking place at a school during a school day, or there can be an after-school project taking place at either a school or a community center. But it needs to be for K through 12 students. The projects taking place at the community center or after school do not have to be open to the general public, but it does have to be the same group of students. And the school partner or community partner has to be in the same county where you're in the applicant. The applicant itself can be the artist, a nonprofit, a PTA, a local government. There is a 25% match. The school partner must be a public or charter school certified by BOCES. And then the partner does have to have a letter of commitment, and there has to be 3 sequential learning sessions as part of this grant program. So the criteria for this grant program, we're looking at the artistic or cultural merit, the learning outcomes and evaluation, the involvement of the qualified artist, the needs and importance to the students, and then the accurate and practical budget. And now up next, I'm going to talk about the actual deadlines for these programs. So there's a staggered deadlines for these grant programs. The first deadline is October 16th for the Teaching Artist Grant. The next is the Individual Artist Grant, which is October 23rd. And the Community Arts is October 30th. So it's an all-online application, and the application closes 11:59 p.m. on the deadline day. So again, those are the staggered grant deadlines for these particular grant programs. So as far as the application goes, we use an online application system. It's called Submittable. It's great. It's very easy to use and fill out and submit applications. A stable system and server. You can save and return to it anytime. You do have to create a separate budget form and upload it into the system. Now there is a separate video that I have created on our website that walks you through the entire way to do the Submittable application, but I'm going to do a brief run through of the actual information for the application. It's broken into different parts. There's applicant information, there's project information and narrative, budget information, narrative and form, the letter of partnership if it's needed or applicable to your grant, then bios, whether they're typed or attached as artist, artist samples, and then any kind of marketing materials. So when you go to the application, you'll have a number of different grants that you're going to see. Make sure you click on the right grant program, because we do offer a number of grant programs and other call for artists and other forms online. So make sure you find the correct grant application you're looking for. So you want to click on that one, and then after you do that, you will be taken to another screen where you'll have the opportunity either to create an account or sign in. If you already have an account through Submittable, use that one. It's nice because then you can keep all your organizational applications in the same account. If you don't, create a new one by clicking the button. It's very simple. It does not have to be tied to your organization, just something that you can remember. But again, it's nice to have all those applications under one account. And then after that, you're going to have a brief welcome introduction message. And there's also a place where you can get a link back to the guidelines, and then also a link back to the budget form. Again, there's a separate budget form that you must upload into this application system. And then once you finish with just reading through that part and making sure you understand everything, is when you actually will scroll down through the application. This is just snippets. Again, if you go to the other video, they'll see a wide, very detailed information about how to submit and include all the information in your application. But it's generally going to be information that you either type in or check boxes. It's very simple. If you can type an email, upload a document into an email, that's all the technical prowess you're going to need. This is an example of the narratives boxes, and then also where you can upload a file. It's just like attaching a file to an email. It'll find the file on your documents or in your folder, wherever you have your files on your computer, and just attach them. I do recommend typing and pasting the narrative, or copying and pasting. It makes it much easier. So now the budget form itself. So the budget form needs to be uploaded into the system, and remember there's some key things with the budget as far as how much money you can ask for the percentage of your project budget. You can only ask for up to 75%. You do have to 25% match. Make sure it's as detailed as possible, and make sure that project income and project expenses match each other. This is an example of the budget form. There again is a separate video that details how the budget is created. But the top part is going to be the income section, where you're going to list all the different funding sources, including the grant request for how much money you're asking for. And the bottom part is going to be the expenses. And this is where you list all the different expenses for the actual budget form. And the left-hand number column is the amount that you want the grant to actually cover. The right-hand column for the number is the amount that the rest of your money is going to cover. Those numbers all need to match up, and then your final total project expenses and your project income must match up. So once you finish all the uploading of all the documents and everything, then it just comes to the application e-signature, terms and conditions, where you would submit it. Now this application does auto-save, kind of like Google Drive, but make sure you do hit that save draft button as much as possible, just to make sure you don't lose your information. But then once you submit it, you will get confirmation. Make sure you get that email confirmation. If you don't, chances are you didn't submit it. So applications are reviewed by an outside panel of peer artists, community members. The Arts Council staff does not make any funding decisions. We facilitate the process, provide historical information about applicants. But as far as that application, we do not provide any insight. After the award decisions are made, they go to the Arts Council board for final approval. And then you can email narratives to myself to help review and go over them. Please get them before at least 1 week before the deadline, otherwise I won't be able to review them. But online we do have a number of other support materials and information available. So as far as writing the application, make sure you understand that it is very, very competitive. It's each year we get a large number of applications, and there's always more funding requests than we have available. So just take it as very competitive. One thing to know is it's not a personal statement. This is not an opportunity to talk for 4 paragraphs about why you've been loving art your whole life. This is a grant application. You need to get to the point. You need to talk about your funding request, the project details. You want to make sure you tell a cohesive story. You want them to understand what it is you're talking about. You want them to understand from the very beginning. Make sure you write to the funder. So this is a grant program for arts and cultural activities. It's not necessarily a grant program for economic impact. It's not necessarily a grant program for tourism. So make sure you're referencing the arts and cultural impact of the project. Make sure you're focusing outward, not inward. Making sure this is a grant for the community good, not necessarily about the organizational benefits. So make sure it's very clear that you're focusing on the community. And then also demonstrate any outside local support commitment. It shows that you have a lot of community buy-in for your project. Make sure you follow the directions. It's very easy to forget to do something, but it's also amazing how many times that it simply is following the directions can help you with your application. Make sure someone else looks at your draft, whether that's myself, from the Arts Council, or someone that's not familiar with the project. A lot of times you're filling in information in your head that you think is on the page, but is not actually there. So make sure you have someone else look at your draft. Make sure you use the same kind of wording, same consistency, same presentation. It all matters, making sure it's easier and understandable for the review panelists. Get professional support materials. It doesn't mean you have to go and hire a professional necessarily, but make sure your media, make sure everything looks as professional as possible, that you didn't just put it together. So take care in putting those materials together. Use the documents that the grant provides. We provide a budget form. You must use that budget form. It's one, to make the review panel process as easy as possible, but also to make sure we capture all the information we do. And then anything you put in that application, make sure you back up with claims. If you're saying that the community wants this, well, how do you know that? Make sure that's very clear in your application. You want to start out when you're writing as clear and strong as possible. Again, you want to tell a cohesive story, and you want them to understand from the very beginning what your grant application is about. You don't want them to wait 5 paragraphs to figure out what it's about. Use as simple language as understandable as possible. You don't need to use large grant speak words. You don't need to use 10 words when 1 will do. You want them to just be very clear about what you're trying to achieve. You want to write with confidence, using a lot of active words. Don't write "we hope this project," but instead write "this project will." Be very clear, concise, and specific with everything. The more details, the better. It shows that you've really thought out your project. It shows that you've thought of everything. And it just goes to show the care that you've taken to putting together your application, and it can speak to how your project might come out. Whatever information you want, though, make sure is in that application, because the review panelists will not read between the lines. So you really need to make sure everything is in there. And then everything in the application matters. It all is part of the whole. So make sure you take care with every single part. It definitely matters the impact of the money. So they want to see that money is being spent well. These are public funds. So they want to see that money is being spent wisely and accurately and productively. If you know of other organizations doing similar projects, make sure you try to combine with others. It's really important that there isn't 2 applications doing the same thing. There's no guarantees. Each year is a new year, so make sure that you take that into account. Just because you've gotten funding before or didn't get funding, no guarantee from year to year. Make sure you detail everything. Make sure nothing is in flux. And then also your application, the narrative and the budget form, supplemental forms, they all need to tell the same reality. They all need to match up to each other. You can't have different information in the budget form that's not than in the narrative, because it can cause discrepancies in understanding what you're actually asking for. So make sure everything matches up. And then always refer back to the criteria. That's what the review panels are going to be looking at, to way they determine and evaluate whether you get funding and how much funding. So that's pretty much it for the brief run through of this presentation. You can go to a seminar webinar. You're required to if you're a new applicant. Returning applicants, I highly recommend it as well. And that can give you a lot more in-depth information. But this was a brief run through again, and that's the contact information. Please don't hesitate to contact me.